So again, I want to introduce Tim. And Tim, again, an amazing person that I've worked with very closely for about 3 years, direct contact with him. And I can tell you the first time I met him, has very shiny shoes, looks really nice dressed. Like I said earlier, I avoid him because I look so bad compared to him. So it's pretty embarrassing to walk up to him. But I think what I really noticed about is the ability for him to really socialize the cultural transformation that they've been doing in his organization. So I'm really, he walks the walk, and he's really expanded his capabilities and his leadership style. I'm so impressed and so honored to have him present today. Tim, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you so much, Rick. I really appreciate that. And this is an honor to be here, an honor and privilege to be able to present and collaborate with each one of you. And so I'm going to go ahead and start presenting. I do have a PowerPoint and share my screen. Let me go ahead and. Perfect. Okay. Does everybody see my screen all right?
Yep, it's perfect.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So again, it's awesome to be here, everybody. Welcome to the August event. I'm so honored and privileged to be here. And what we're going to be talking about is driving culture while we're all working remotely. And I want you to kind of get in that mindset here of a hybrid culture. I want you to just kind of plant that seed right up front. That I think that's the key term we're hearing now is we're going to be hybrid moving forward. And I really want to know, what does that mean and what does that look like? And I think us as leaders in our organizations to be able to start communicating and what does that look like and influence others. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. A couple things here. We're going to be talking about how to drive culture. The whole concept of WIFM, it's not an FM radio station. Anybody know what WIFM stands for?
What's in it for me?
Absolutely. And that's what we want to be able to look at is what's in it for me whenever we're talking about change and change initiatives. And then we're going to talk about what's called the states of change. We want to be able to look at what does a future state look like and how do we get from where we currently are to where we want to be. I do want to make sure that this is a dialogue. This is an ongoing discussion. This is me learning from each one of you, just like you can learn from every one of us. That's what we want to be able to do is have a discussion. I do have a Jamboard that I want to make sure that we're able to share. And one of the key concepts here, whenever you're talking about driving change and making sure you're driving culture, is being able to communicate. And for an introductory activity, I would love you to share, first of all, your name. And I'd love to hear what was the most memorable feedback that you've gotten. Okay, so memorable can mean a lot of different things. It could mean good, bad, and ugly. And that's actually, Nelu and I were talking about that when we first jumped on. And that's right when Rick jumped on when I said ugly. And he said, who you calling ugly? Yeah. But I want you to put in there your name and what's the most memorable feedback you've had. As I said, could be good, bad, and ugly. And the chat, it should be in the chat for the Jamboard link. And if you could go ahead and click into that link, and on the left-hand side, you'll see several different icons. The fourth icon down is a sticky note. If you could go ahead and put in there your name and the most memorable feedback that you've had. If this starts to get filled up really fast, we do have frame number 2 is also memorable feedback. Okay, so if I can have you go, let's go ahead and take a couple minutes in there. Thank you, Jarvis. Thank you, Cassandra. Okay. You're ugly. Oh my gosh. Dan, is that you? Dan, what was your feedback?
That was Rick.
Okay. UGLY. Can everybody access this okay? I want to make sure you're able to get in there. Okay, thanks, Godwin. No, I'm not that obsessive compulsive person. I've had people before where they literally start putting these all in these amazing organized way. I'm just kind of putting it here. And Andrea, okay. Nice. Is there anybody who cannot get in there? I want to make sure you're able to get in there. Okay.
The reason it's memorable that somebody listed me as passive aggressive is because I'm aggressive. I'm about as passive as a hammer. So,
Oh, I like that. Okay. Nice. So it's okay. Act aggressive. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Elizabeth. All right. So I'm curious here as people are putting that feedback up here. I'm curious if I can see a show of hands. And Philip, you've got a question. Are you able to get in? You're not able to get in? Were you able to see the link in the chat? Should be right here in the chat. If you click onto that in the chat. Okay, now you're in. Yes, and it's the fourth one down. So because I'm sharing my screen, you were probably clicking on my screen directly. All right, thank you, Philip. Are there any other hands that okay. Hi, Joanne. Great to see you again.
Hey, Tim. Nice
All
to
right.
see you again.
Yeah, it's so great to hear your voice. Wow. Okay, so a couple different things. I'd love to hear your show of hands here. That oh, please don't show yourself eating on camera. Nice. Thank you, Regina. Oh wow, wow. Now I'm curious. I'd like to see a show of hands. How many of you have had this feedback? Was it 1 year? If you can go ahead and put your hand up. See if we can go ahead and put this in here. Was this feedback within 1 year? Put your hand up. Okay. Put your hand up if it was 3 years. Put your hand up if it was within 5 years. Keep your hand up if it was 10 years, within the last 10 years. So what's that telling you about feedback right up front? I'm curious, what's that telling you about feedback?
That it sticks with you.
It does. Thank you, Victoria. It really does stick with you. And that's the thing, is that whenever you're doing some sort of change and you're doing any sort of communication, when you give somebody feedback, it will stick with people. And that's the point, is that you really want to be deliberate and you really want to make sure that you're getting the point across. Because how do you think Georgina felt when they said, Regina, stop, don't eat on camera? How do you think she was feeling? Or when all of a sudden you hear, oh, you suck, or don't be so passive aggressive, Dan. What do you think? How do you think people were feeling?
oh, you get offended and defensive, right?
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Oh,
Sorry. I don't know if you guys can hear me. I'll put it on the chat because I have feedback.
okay. No, thank you, Regina. You're feeling offended. Now, the reason why and then what else? What else are you thinking? You're ugly, you're loud, but in a good way. Sure you are, Godwin. You're loud, but in a good way. You don't understand your value. Oh, I interrupted somebody.
No, go ahead, finish. I was interrupted you. Sorry.
I still felt like it wasn't really good because I felt like it was just trying to tell me that you're loud. The in a good way was just to subtle it to make you not get angry.
Yeah. Kind of soften it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
You need it. Yeah. Okay. And then Joanna, what were you gonna say?
Kind of change your days depends on the feedback he give you. It could change your whole day, your whole mood.
Yeah, it changes your day and your whole mood. And again, several of us are saying that this feedback we had was 10 years, or could be even older than 10 years, because we remember it. Now, the reason why I'm saying this right up front, your most memorable feedback, is because whenever you're doing a change, whenever you're really driving a culture, you have to make sure you're communicating. And we need to make sure we're communicating in a professional, respectful manner so that people understand where you're coming from and we're able to build upon it. So I love to do this as an introductory activity because it's about communication. When you're doing a change initiative, whether you're talking face to face, you're talking remote, you need to make sure that you communicate and are giving people feedback. And if people are feeling like Godwin is saying, if I'm feeling a little bit still offended, how much is he really going to want to buy into that change? You know, if all of a sudden, you know, Joanna's feeling this way and feeling like, you know, my day is kind of ruined, how much is she really going to buy into this cultural change that's happening? So we really have to be careful how we communicate right up front to make sure that we're in a respectful, professional manner. And to be able to drive strategy, this is, you know, when you're working remotely and you're working in person, you're working with people, we want to make sure we're able to drive your organization's strategy. What's your mission, your vision? What are we trying to do, and what's the culture we want to have? You want to be very deliberate in how we're doing this. And again, I'm a huge fan of quotes. I don't know if you know, if you have very inspirational quotes, I'd love you to be able to share them with me. But Dan, can I have you read this quote by Jerome de Flander, please?
Yeah, so the quote is, you cannot be everything to everyone. If you decide to go north, you cannot go south at the same time.
What does that mean to you?
You know, I mean, you've got to, yeah, you can't be, I don't know, it's a restatement of everything. Like, you need to commit to whatever it is that you are, be true to what you are, right? And trying to make everybody happy means that nobody's happy.
I love the word that you used was commit. I think that's so important. You know, what are we going to do? What are we going to commit to? Because you want to, it's very difficult to say when you're going through a change and say, this is what we're going to do, except for this, or except for this team, or except for this agile team, whatever it may be. You want to make sure you're able to jump into it. And feedback, the communication, collaboration, and teamwork are so key to being able to drive that strategy to make that culture happen. And, you know, we can't all of a sudden say to people, bring your whole self to work. And while we're working remotely, bring your whole self, but don't eat. You know, I don't want to hear the dog barking in the background. Well, either you bring your whole self to work or not. These things are going to be happening. And that's what we want to be able to do. And I love that word you used, Dan, was commit, because that's exactly what we're talking about, making sure that we want to be able to commit into it. Okay. And again, I'm such a huge fan of quotes with this one. This is another quote I love from Peter Drucker. Victoria, can I have you read this, please?
Sure. The best way to predict your future is to create it.
Nice.
I think I'm going to copy that and put it on my wall.
Yeah. And what does that mean to you?
That means that I have control.
Oh,
I have a sticky on my monitor that says, "Don't wait for other people to open doors for you."
wow.
Pretty
Oh, I
much
like
the
that a
same
lot.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's being able to, I like what you said, that you are in control. And that's one of the things, especially when we're working hybrid here, we don't know what the future is going to be. And a lot of times we can sit back and see, what's going to happen? Right now, my organization is actually going through an acquisition. We can sit back and sit on our thumbs and kind of see what happens to us and let things come to us. Or, you know what, we can be proactive and create the future that we want to have. Every one of us can do that. And here's the thing, is that nobody really knows what the future is going to look like in a hybrid remote working place. Nobody does know it. You know, we say, oh, we'll have a couple days in the office, couple days here or there. We're not really sure what that's going to look like, but we can help drive that and predict it by what do we want to make sure that we have happen, and we can drive that. So thank you, Victoria, by saying this is something that you can own. And so I'm curious here. I'd love to hear, and I want to make sure I'm using the right terminology. I know that several of you have been Scrum Masters or project managers. Some of you are managers or leaders in your organization. Again, I think all of you are leaders in one capacity or another. But I think everybody is on an Agile team. Am I understanding correctly? Everybody is participating somewhat on an Agile team. Is that a fair assumption? Okay, so I'd like to hear that then on your Agile teams, or just even in your teams in general, what are you doing different for learning because of COVID? What are you doing different because of COVID? If I can have you go on to frame number 3, I'd love to be able to hear, you know, let's go and leverage each other's expertise. You know, what are you doing differently to manage, you know, the change that you're going through here in the learning and development because of COVID, because of the pandemic? You know, I'm going to go ahead and share it here right now. I had never used Jamboard before. That's one of the things that I'm doing differently, being able to engage people that way. If I can have you go ahead and go back in the Jamboard, frame number 3, what are you doing differently as a result of COVID? All right, so I'm putting these into a couple different areas here. I'd love to hear more about this right here. Trying to coach, not being face to face. Tell us more about that, because that's something I think we can all learn from that. Tell us about that. Even if I'd love to hear from the leader who said that, but I'd also like people to add on to that. Trying to coach, not being face to face. Tell us more about that.
The current assignment I'm on, I was brought in specifically told the product owner doesn't have a agile mindset, and he wants to bastardize and cut out ceremonies that he sees no value in, they're not efficient. So in a pre-COVID world, it would have been, let's go for a coffee, let's sit, talk, let's try and find some common ground, and understand what it is that you have an issue with a particular ceremony, and being able to read their body language, their expression. Not being able to be face to face, you don't get that tangible, seeing their faces, seeing their body posture. Say you start bringing up retrospectives and you see him fold his arm and pull back, you instantly recognize, okay, this is a point I need to go and explore a little more. It's different now in the remote environment where they don't even want to turn on the screen. So it's kind of, you're trying to read them through their voices, as opposed to the face-to-face, which, Agile lends more to, right?
So let's unpack that. Philip, thank you so much for sharing that. That's exactly right. I was planning where you're going. Thank you so much. That, let's face it, whenever there's a change going on, people will resist because they may not understand. And when they don't understand, they're going, well, I don't know if that's really necessary. That ceremony, that sort of thing, is that really adding the value? And when people don't understand, they will resist. And when you're driving the culture and you're driving the different types of changes, we need them to buy into it. Because what happens if we don't follow are we going to have the strict agile principles? Maybe not, but we can morph, but we also don't want to lose the essence of it. So how can we make sure that Philip and us, we don't lose whenever we're doing a change, that we don't lose the essence of what we're trying to achieve? I like what Philip was saying, is that we can do some coaching. What else can we do?
Well, we need to be creative and just find as many possible ways to communicate as we can. And and this is awesome because it's reminding me of where I've gone off track. And we have to be incredibly intentional about reaching out to people and creating those channels of communication, where so often when we were face to face, it was easy. And now it requires effort. We just have to be willing to make that effort.
Thank you, Paul. That's so true. Being very deliberate and make effort to do it. Excellent. So you said communication. I heard a couple other people saying communication. Build on that, because that's a key point. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. No, I just wrote something about holding the audience's attention, which is something that I've had to learn how to do. Like doing things such as, which is funny because I don't have my camera on right now because I just got working out. But having your camera on is very important so that they can see you. Being able to transition back and forth between camera and your presentation, things like saying people's names, kind of, like how you're doing is, calling on people to interact. It just keeps their attention, because it's really hard when you're working remote. You get distractions everywhere.
Thank you so much, Jarvis. And you're okay. You're participating, and I know you're in, so you're good. Yeah. So it's keeping the attention spans. I'm hearing people saying they're working more, helping others in needs, tracking the stakeholder engagement individually, monitoring members. Okay. Learning to command and hold an audience's attention. I think that's what you're saying there. Utilizing social platforms. We're all using all of these different types of virtual types of collaboration tools. Hybrid meetings. Tell us more about that. What do you mean when you say implement best practices to hybrid meetings, no longer one audience? What do you mean by that?
Well, I think for us, I just wrote a blog on this very topic because I think people were forgetting when we went to the hybrid environment, allowing people to be in the office and for some to be virtual, is that you have two audiences now. You're talking to two different people, so you don't want to alienate one over the other by forgetting, for example, that the information that you're sharing, if you're in person and you're using a physical whiteboard, the people that are at home might not be able to see it, and vice versa. Making sure that your camera's on, like somebody else just mentioned, making sure that everyone has a laptop in the meeting so that when you're projecting, you're seeing everyone's faces and not just an overall meeting where you really can't make out who's talking because you're at home and they're all sitting in a meeting room together in the office. So just being really aware that there's two different audiences involved when you're in a hybrid workspace.
Nice. That's so great. Thank you so much, Cassandra. Yeah, and it's pretty cool because there's a tremendous amount of equity that has happened as a result of this, that even the people who are more shy, indirect, reserved have a voice. Maybe they might not speak up, but you know what? They can go into the chat. They can go into the chat and say what they need to be able to do, and agree with people. So thank you, Victoria, showing, great responses. They're able to give that feedback and be able to be engaged, and add things into the Jamboard and so forth. And as you said, having somebody who's in the office and then someone who's virtual, having multiple different audiences. It's kind of funny too, because the script has kind of been flipped, that it used to be that people who were virtual were kind of forgotten about. Do you remember when the phone used to sit in the middle of the room and you'd actually forget about the person who was virtual? Was there anybody who was that before? And they'd say, hey, I'm here, my voice, I'm part of this team, can you hear me? And now it's the other way around, that it's people who are virtual, they're people who are in person saying, hey, don't forget about me too. It's an interesting dynamic. I love this, being flexible, creating content that interacts in the office. Yeah, that multiple audience one. And then I'd like to tackle this one a little bit too, a little more also. I'm traveling 25% of the time to my company's headquarters. Tell us more. Is that a, like, so obviously once or twice a week, or in other words, 1 week out of the month? What is that looking like? Like, are there other people?
I'm flying into my headquarters once a week out of the month. And this is a new company. So, as a part of COVID, I kind of moved from one company to another. And they're willing for me to be fully remote. But they weren't very open about the fact that also was going to include 25% travel. I'm okay with it for now. Especially as you establish relationships, but long term, that, I don't know, it'll be interesting.
It is. And I'm curious, are they putting you up in a hotel, or do you have like two different residences?
Put me up in a hotel, and I think that's part of the conversation I need to have with my boss, which is, like, I'm not the only one that travels more. The headquarters is there, people travel in there, and when I look at our bills, I just look at it and I go, you could have a corporate apartment for this rate and have less drama, and be in a nicer place. So I just think it's something that they've never even thought of before. So
yeah, thank you so much. And all of you are hitting on key things with that. We haven't even thought of these before. These are things we're tackling, new ground. And by the way, it's not just Dan, your organization, Paul, your organization. It's all organizations are going through this. And how do we make sure we get everybody's voices heard and make sure that we have that true collaboration and equity where people have a voice to be heard? And so that's one of the key things I really want you to think about. Because here's the point, if you're able to help solve this for your organization, you are going to dramatically transform your organization and impact your space where they are in business, because this is something we're all trying to go through. So when we drive cultural change, great input, everybody. When we drive cultural change, this was actually a figure done by Scott Galloway. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's got a blog. He's got a consulting firm. He was a professor at NYU. And he has an online university called Section 4. And what they do is they actually grab professors from Berkeley, from Harvard, Princeton, all the top universities, and they teach workshops in an 8-week session. It's a streamlined way to get an education. And so they just started doing this in the last couple of years, and it's really picked up tremendously. And then COVID hit, and a lot of people were going into online learning. And so it's amazing that drastically their numbers went up. But at the same time, some weird behaviors started to show. And I'm curious how these resonate with you and your team. So in other words, 4 out of 10 people that are enrolled in a workshop or assigned to a meeting, a webinar, any sort of, agile team, one of those types of meetings, they're going to drop. So in other words, 10 people could be invited. That 4 immediately are not going to attend. Okay, that's physical. Okay, they're right up front are not going to attend. And that 7 out of 10 participants or attendees, of those 6 then that are in that meeting, that workshop, that webinar, of those 6, 7 out of 10 of those attendees will miss at least part of that workshop, that meeting, webinar. And I'm curious, how does this relate to you and your teams? I'm curious, is that something you've seen? And why do you think that is? Okay, if I can have you go ahead and go on to frame number 5, how do those figures from Scott Galloway's research, how do they relate to you out of your teams? That 4 out of 10 will drop a workshop, and that 7 out of 10 will miss at least part of a workshop, part of a meeting. I'm curious, and why do you think that is?
So Tim, are you saying that every meeting should have those statistics? That every meeting that you're running?
No, I'm not saying should. That's what they're seeing.
Wow.
Yeah. In the last year and a half, that's what he's seen. Really, really intense. Your wheels are turning, Rick.
Yeah. Let's let everybody else talk.
And I think you hit the nail on the head here. Distractions. Wow. Not a clear agenda or objectives. Yeah. So let's look at these. What do you mean when you say distractions? What do you mean by that?
So that was me. No, I just think like I'm looking at the last part of this, where either people will be late or sometimes when I'm like, trying to engage people as well, and I'll ask them, hey, or what do you think of this? And like, I'm sorry, I was multitasking. Can you repeat the question? I'm like, I'm like,
yeah, you can tell too, right? Because that person was quiet for a really long time.
Yeah, and it might not even be their fault, right? Like someone else in the company is like, hey, can you help me with this? Or hey, what do you think about this? Or something like that. And it's just so they're not engaged. So I always try to like we're doing, calling on people and hey, what do you think about this? Let me get your input. Let's go to Jamboard. Let's that engagement is really key to facilitation and to get your teams really involved. So, but there, it does time to time, hey, can you repeat that? Or
and Joe, we've all been there. We've all had that, and that's the thing. And it's hard not to get frustrated, but we want to be able to hear what they have to say. And so it's interesting because that is acceptable, and that's what we're kind of hearing. What people are saying. What's this one right here? I like this saying. It probably feels less embarrassing to step out of a meeting now. Or a lot of times we're inviting more people to the meetings. I mean, if you look at people, it's back to back to back meetings all day, every day. Do we really need to be in every one of those meetings? Mm-hmm. And then there are times. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to say something.
Go for it, Godwin.
No, yeah, I wanted to say that is one of the major problems because most people are in meetings that they're not even supposed to be in. And so, like Joe saying, the person is more taxing because I don't know if it was a survey that said if you're in a meeting and you're not really contributing in the next 10 minutes, then maybe you shouldn't be in that meeting. Because if you get distracted within the first 15 minutes of the meeting, then you're not supposed to be in that meeting. So
that's a good rule of thumb. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, and so it's getting the right audience. And a lot of times people are over inviting people. Oh, maybe this person should be here. Should they be really here? And then the people who really need to be there, the decision makers or the people who are going to be giving input and feedback may not be there. So guess what we get to do again?
Meet again.
Yeah.
But what I'm finding is the invitations come because the hallway conversations are gone. But sticking
Ah.
your head in somebody's office to get an update is gone. So people, will loop somebody else into your meeting. Let's say you do invite the decision maker, but they bring somebody that might have to cover for them because they can't, that hallway past you in the break room kind of conversation is not there anymore.
So the way that I try to handle that is you could pick up the phone or whatever, Zoom or whatever, but
Yeah.
chat, right? There's Slack, there's Teams, there's
Yep. That's what I do too. I tell people it's, all you have to do is ping me and we can
Yep.
get on a call immediately. You can call me right through my computer and we're looking at each other, but not everybody thinks that way.
right.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And who was that who shared that? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Oh, it's Victoria.
Oh, hey, Victoria. Okay, great. Thank you.
I don't have my camera on because my dog is running around.
No, you're fine. You're fine. And so I saw someone in here put the internet connections, the Zoom meeting. All right. So, I do workshops all the time and I had this, I hear people, oh, my camera's not working today or my internet. And so the story in my head is, oh, okay, this person really does want to be here. Okay. And I'll leave it at that. And the other day I had a very, very important meeting with a client. And I literally had that. My Zoom was not working. I clicked the link numerous times. It didn't work. And I had to reboot my PC. I called on my phone and guess what? My phone wasn't, I was like, what is going on here? This really does happen. Oh my gosh. And I'm telling all these other people, does this really happen? And so it can happen, it's the technology. But I'm bringing these all up because that is part of the culture. And I think if we do not put this into the equation, that people are feeling overloaded with meetings, people are going to drop meetings. When people are in meetings, they're going to be distracted. They're going to be pulled away. There's going to be different boundaries that hit them. It's not surprising. There's a grace period. People will be late. This is part of the culture that we're having. And again, if we can solve this, this is something that's going to be transformative, not just in your organization, but in cultural for all organizations. I like this right here. Can I have somebody expand upon this? Because this one is a little bit different. My team is the exact opposite. We have better attendance now that we're remote. I think the virtual attendance is better because we can attend with less preparation, travel time, we multitask, and leadership will question your absence more if you're working remotely than over sitting in the office. So there's a couple different things here. I can take that a couple different ways. Please expand upon that.
Yeah, I've just learned that for some reason we just have much better attendance now that we're virtual. Whenever we scheduled meetings, there would always be that person, well, I've got something that came up, so I can't show up. And, they're at their desk working while everyone's in the meeting, and then they want to email to explain it. And that happened a lot. Now that it's virtual, they can multitask. They can still do their work from their desk while on there. So a lot of times they don't care because you can't really see if they're multitasking. You can just see their face. And so they'll do their work while they're in the meeting and, paying probably 50% of attention. But there's a lot more of that. And then just not having to, I can get up and 5 minutes later, I'm working, working at home. So it just gives you the flexibility of attending things however you look versus going into work. You need to make sure you're presentable and then you show up to work for your meeting. And so it's a lot more preparation than it is virtually. And so I think that contributes to a lot of those people just being able to show up now. Plus, like I said, your manager looks over and sees you at your desk. They're probably not going to question as much if you're missing a meeting. But if you're, virtual, they don't know where you're at and you're not in meetings, they're going to question it because they have no idea what you're doing.
So that was so that last piece right there is probably the one that really is concerning, because what's that saying? What are you guys hearing when you hear that? That leadership is wondering what you're doing. What's the key thing that you're hearing there?
Lack of trust.
Yeah. And if you want to drive a change, you want to drive the culture, if there is an issue with trust, even just a hint of it, the culture, it's going to be hard to change. Mm-hmm. That trust piece is so huge. And who was that who was speaking? I'm sorry, I didn't.
It's Jarvis.
Jarvis, that was spot on. Thank you so much.
Yep.
And Philip, I see your hand is up.
You're muted, Philip.
Wasn't sure if I was. I'm wondering because I'm going to assume most of you live in Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. Is it common for the internet to go down every time there's lightning strikes or thunder?
Yes, if you have Comcast.
I was definitely going to say it depends on where you're at, but it is a Comcast thing.
It's a Comcast.
Okay.
I mean, I've been getting it with Atlantic as well, so I don't know. And I'm in Miami Beach. I don't know where everybody else is at.
Yeah, I get it when the sun is shining. I mean, that's,
I'm in meetings and I'm looking out the window. I'm looking out the window going, please don't do this to me when the meeting.
Please don't rain. Yeah.
Yep. Or you hear a thunderstorm and you're like, the thunder strike in the background. You're like going, oh,
not today. I've got a meeting. I've got a meeting.
Yeah. Yep. You start warning people. I may drop off. And it goes right back to that conversation.
Yeah.
I just love when you're in a meeting and you're talking for the last 5 minutes and then you realize that your Zoom crashed and no one heard anything you said.
Yeah. And you know what that's called, Philip? So thank you for bringing that up. You know what that's called? That is the Milli Vanilli principle. Blame it on the rain.
Nice.
I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that.
That is funny.
I'm going to try that. Switch to my phone.
Hey,
Milli Vanilli happened.
Do these kids know who Milli Vanilli is?
Yeah, way before my time. I saw it on a VH1 or whatever. Or is VH1 even around anymore? Yeah. All right. So here's the thing, and you guys have all alluded to this, which is really great, is that who cares more about your career than you? Who cares more about your career more than you? And the answer is nobody. And so when you're talking about change, you're talking about culture, you want to make sure that you're an active participant in this and making sure that you are part of this and being able to help drive those change and being able to say, what can I commit to? What do I need to do to drive this change? And what do I need to own this? And again, I'm a huge fan of quotes of this. I did see a hand up a second ago that was put down. Was that Thomas? Did I see? Was that Thomas? Was that you?
Yeah, I don't know if it's too late, but I was in a meeting doing a presentation for my team. People were in the office. I was working from home, and they actually lost power.
Oh, in the office?
In the office, they lost power. So I was talking to myself for half an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that's a total flip the script that way. That is bizarre.
Yeah.
Wow. And then Thomas, can I have you read this quote by Gandhi?
Oh. As Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world.
Yes. And that's when we're talking about, thank you so much for reading that. Thank you for sharing, Thomas. So when we're talking about change in the world, that's why we have a mirror. This is where the change starts. We want to look at the person in the mirror. This is where the change needs to start, and we need to make sure we're owning it. Whenever we talk about a change, it's really easy for me to say, oh yeah, Diana needs to change. Natalie needs to change. Rick needs to change. It's really easy to point at every other person, but it starts with right up front, putting the mirror up to ourselves, saying, what do I need to do? What do I need to own? And how am I part of this? And so when we hear about change, this is something that we've heard quite often, that change management. Oh, is this the new flavor of the month? Well, no, change is part of how we're doing business. This is what we're doing here. Change is the new norm. So I'm curious, just to make sure we do have a level set here. When you hear change management, what is change management? And then what are some drivers of change? And so we have right here on frame number 7, if I can have you go ahead. What is change management? I'd love to hear your thoughts on what is, when you hear change management, and what are some drivers of change? Why do we say that change is the new norm? If I can have you go and take like 30 seconds, just put some sticky notes there. Yeah, it's so interesting because several of you may have come from an IT background, and change management can mean a lot of different things. For instance, you'll hear about change control, and that's many times how it's used. And when we're talking about change control, this is saying, hey, we're going to be having a new system starting on this date. We're going to have a new process on this date. That is extremely important. That is extremely important. Absolutely. That's not really change management. When we're talking about change management, it's that next step. Oh, we're changing a new system here, a new technology. This is where Rick says, do I have the skills to drive that? How is that going to impact me? Joe is saying, how is this going to impact my reporting that I'm doing? It really is about being able to own that piece, and it's that people side that we're talking about. Yeah. And I like that, a uniform matter, that you have a process going on where you're able to be, it's beyond communication. It's being able to say, this is what we're doing. Excellent. Yeah. And drivers of change, we could go on and on. People, process, technology, life, the motivation, um, money, people, what's happening around us, the different life, the environment, the internet. We're going to see several different things happen as a result of this in the next couple of years. I like to say right now, and again, I'm showing my age. Does anyone remember the video game Pong? I'm showing my age. Pong. Anyone remember that? You had two paddles like this, and the ball went bing, bing. That was a video game. It was literally like the first video game.
Yeah, that's Atari's first game, I think.
Right. And then within literally 3 to 5 years, you had Atari and television, Sega Genesis. You had all these different video games that just completely proliferated. Well, I like to say right now that we're in the Pong version of remote learning and remote meetings. For instance, we're just sitting here with a 2D talking to each other, that in a matter of, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years from now, people are going to say to us, you were on meetings all day staring at a screen. How did you do it? Because we're going to see so many different types of changes that are happening here. So yeah, life events will happen. These are great examples. So when we're talking about change management, just as a quick overview, it's really about saying, how do we have those behaviors? How do we drive different behaviors, have a consistent approach, have a model and process and tools to be able to drive change, and have that knowledge transfer to where we want to go. And it's about that competency or capability type of building to be able to drive change, whether it's a technical or a social side of things. And I love to say it here that change, change, it's about focusing on business results, looking at your people side of things. How does this impact people? Okay, it's not just about having that communication. And so here's the thing, when we're talking about change management, there are senders and receivers of communication. And no two changes are ever the same. I'm curious here. No two changes are the same. Why do you think that is? I just love to hear a couple ideas. Why do you think and Natalie, you've been kind of quiet. Why do you think no two changes are ever the same? For instance, we're all going through the pandemic, but all of our experiences are just a little bit different. Why do you think that is?
It could be just our living circumstances, the families that we are a part of, finances, interpretation of the information coming in.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. And all of those and then some. The maturity of the organization, the different technologies, the different systems. When does a contract what consultants do we have? All these different things fit into it. So even though we may have gone through a change before, each one is a little bit different. But that doesn't mean we can't leverage the expertise from who are some of the key thought leaders of change management, like ProSci. When we're talking about the ADCAR, that's the model that I'm following here. Who are some other key thought leaders with change, by the way? I'm curious. Who are some? Let's share this real quick. Thought leaders for change. Natalia? Okay, Natalia's name just popped up. Natalia is a change thought leader. Excellent. Who else is a key thought leader?
I'm sensing a need to do more reading in the area of thought leadership.
Yeah, so these are just key ideas for change. Yeah, so the ADCAR approach is what I use. Natalia, looks like you got something going here. Are you?
Not me.
Huh. That's interesting. I'm seeing some red coming up here. That's bizarre. All right, so a couple different things here. When we're talking about the communication of change, it can be viewed from a couple different things here. You have your sender is anyone who's going to be providing information about a change, and a receiver is someone who is being given information about that change. There's an exchange of ideas going here. So when we're talking about our agile teams, our project teams, whether you're a scrum master or whatever type of leader you are in your organization, you're wearing multiple different hats. Many times you could be the sender, many times you could be the receiver. Many times you could be the sender and then receive it and then send it again and again and again. But here's the thing. Many times the sender, they're going to be focusing on the business issues and the needs that need to change, whatever that sentence may be, whatever it is. But the receiver, whenever they're hearing a change, they're going to take this on the personal implications. And many times this is the risk or the uncertainty of how it impacts them personally.
Right.
We're going to hear about, here's a business change, but we're going to hear, whoa, how does that relate to me? Now, what a sender says and what a receiver hears could be two different messages.
Right.
As we went back to your feedback early on when we said, what was a most memorable feedback? Somebody might have said, you're a good listener. For instance, I was told this one time, Tim, you're a pretty good listener for a guy. And I'm like, what? It's kind of like a backhanded compliment. And that's the thing, is we may not get the message being sent is not the message being received. So here's the thing. Many times a leader can sit down with an employee to say, and this could be a team right here, an effort, we're going to improve our processes. We're going to update what we're doing. We're going to automate things that are going on. And, as we automate this is going to really improve our customer experience. And we're going to be such an innovative organization. The leader says this, and the leader could be happy and smiling, enthusiastic and positive and really bought into this. But everybody has their own way of dealing and adapting with change and being able to hear this. And all change is personal. That's with them. What's in it for me? That's what they're going to be hearing. What's this in for me? So again, the leader is bought into this, happy and excited, sharing this message. But when the employee, goes at home and says to their family, what do you think they're going to say? I may not have a job. The company is in trouble. They are trying to do away with my job. What just happened there? I'm curious. What just happened? We're going to automate things. We're going to streamline. We're going to be so innovative. What just happened?
I think all he hears is that automation means some machine is coming to take over his job.
Yep. Automation is taking my job. And the point is, they don't know what's post-automation. And when you're driving culture, when you're driving change, you have to be able to articulate what happens as a result. Because too often we say, oh, now you'll be able to do that value add stuff. These are things that you didn't like doing anyways. This is that paperwork. Now you'll be able to do the other stuff. Well, that's the key point when you're talking about a change and you're talking about the culture. We need to be able to articulate, or at least have some idea, what does that look like? Because otherwise you're going to be in that I may not have a job, in that fear. And again, this is where we assume dialogue has taken place, that there's a transfer of knowledge, that the message being sent is also the message being received. Many times that's not the case. That's not what's going to be happening. And here's the thing, we can't drive culture and we can't drive change if we're not on the same page about what we were going to be focusing on. And the idea is that many times a leader could be spending 95% of the conversation around, and many times it's a monologue, not a dialogue. They're telling you, not engaging you, about why the business needs to change. And then only 5% saying, this is what are the implications to you. And this is where we need to make sure we flip the script. And it literally is 5% about the business case, 95% how is this going to impact you. All right. And I loved it. And I'll get you in a second here, Paul. This is my family. We have out here in Boise, my in-laws have a goat farm, but this is a goat here out in our place in Boise, and those are my daughters and my niece. And when I go home to my kids, do I say, what? And they say, Daddy, how is work? I say, oh yeah, and in an effort to streamline and make our organization more innovative, we're going to automate all of our processes. Is that what I tell them?
No.
No, I'm literally thinking, am I going to have a job? What's going to happen here? And if that is on my mind, how do you think I'm going to be engaging with them? If I'm really fearful of my job, how do I think I'm going to come across? Not good. And this is where you could not be that happy and gregarious person, that positivity, and little things could get upset, and you could have the misdirected animosity. You are not robots. We need to make sure that we engage the whole person. And that's where we say it starts with us being able to communicate it. How does this relate to me? I want to hear the 95%. What is this going to do for my job? I don't want to hear how this is going to be so great for the organization. I get it. What is this going to mean for me? And we have to have those truthful communications, and maybe many times a difficult, heartfelt communication. Paul, I see your hand is risen.
Thanks. Thanks. So going back to, the guy with the head and his hand in whatever. So what came to me was that so often we think of ourselves as I am what I do. And so if there's going to be a change to what I'm going to be doing, then that's a change to me. And that's going to feel like a personal attack. That's going to feel very threatening. Whereas the leaders in the company, the CEO, so forth, it's the company is what I do, the direction, the business, that kind of thing. So there's two different, so that's maybe part of the root cause. And I don't know if you can hear me being drowned out by the rain and the thunder in the background. But the other piece to that is then, we as individuals, we as leaders trying to help our teams adapt to change, need to help them to see that what they are is not what they do. What they are is what they can bring to the table and contribute to, no matter what the situation is.
Profound. You're more than your role. Absolutely. And you're so much more than that. And that's looking at the whole person. That is so great. And that's what we're saying is, if we don't get that point, it's just like Paul is saying there, we miss the opportunity to drive culture. And that's the idea, is that if I'm worried about my role, I'm worried about how this can impact me, what I'm doing, the key business information is not being communicated. And you, in your roles many times as project managers, scrum masters, agile teams, whatever your role as a leader, if you're not hearing the whole message right up front, it's very difficult for you to pay it forward, because you're overshadowed by other doubts, insecurities, or fears that you may not be able to answer, because your team is going to say to you, why are we doing this again? Jarvis, what's the deal? What are we trying to do? Well, you know what? Rick said we have to do this. Rick's the boss. He's telling us we need to do this. How compelling of a reason is it to hear Rick said so? And I'm using Rick as the boss. The boss said so. The CEO said so. Whoever your CEO. How compelling of a reason is that? It's not. That's not getting the emotional investment into it. Okay. And that's where we need to get people to truly buy into this. So I'm curious here. I'd love to hear this conversation that we're having. How does this relate to you and your organization? And what might some resistance or fear look like in your organization? I'm curious. If we can have that on frame number, I like that, Agents of Change, and everyone, good. Over here on frame number 9. How does this resonate with you? How does this relate to you and your organization, and what might resistance look like in your organization? I learned from my coworkers' mistakes. Nice. Look like one of your coworkers. Yeah. Not giving our best. Resistance appears as non-participation, no interaction, no responses. Yeah. It cripples. Wow. It cripples the innovation. And this is the time when we need people as innovative as possible. They feel threatened. Yeah. Because if I'm worried about my job, argumentative, you shouldn't mess with what has been successful. Yeah. Turnover is a huge piece of this. And here's the key takeaway is that we've gotten to a point where people were saying, you know what, I am so happy that I have a job. My company got us through this. We got our computer. I'm able to work remotely. Woohoo. We're past that now. That point of, you know what, we're going to make it through this. Now, what do we do from here? This is getting to that next level where we have to get that emotional investment and really drive. How do we get our employees, instead of being disgruntled or unhappy and just thankful that they have a job, how do we get them to buy into that next piece to move forward? And this is where, oh, a job posting. Yeah. And so there's a lot of job posting. It's really interesting to see what the jobs are out there that are happening and how the jobs postings are. And the idea is that as a transformational leader that each one of you are, you can influence employees in your organization. And one of the key things is expect a resistance. You will have resistance to change. The minute we say things are going to change, resistance will happen. People will say, why are we doing this? What's happening here? And you can use that as a tool of influence, that if you know ahead of time people are going to resist it, let's get them to buy in. Make sure that there is a common idea of the message being sent is the message being received. And if we're able to do this, get the dialogue, the buy-in, and communicate, make sure that the message is the same message and people understand, oh, this is going to impact me. We really create this, what's called a pool of shared meaning, that we're all on the same page with our team, our project teams, our agile teams, our peers, even with our vendors, our different business partners, we get on the same page to make sure that we're able to communicate that. And this was a message, Rick and I were talking about this right before the meeting started, that in communication, especially when we're talking about cultural change, cultural shifts, people need to hear the message 5 to 7 times in multiple formats from multiple leaders before they truly know that it's what's being understood. They need to hear the same message in multiple formats before they get it. Why do you think that is? I'm curious. People agree or disagree, and why do you think that is?
I've used this quote a lot of times with my spouse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a life skill. It truly is. It is a life skill, Philip. Yeah. So why?
I was going to say, Tim, I think it's just reinforcement because, we're getting so much information now, in a virtual space, whether it's Teams, in a chat format, and then you're also looking out for your, stuff that's in your email, and there's a blog, there's the internet. People have so many different places to look for information now that you really have to kind of know what your audience is and to hit them wherever they go to get the information.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And so you're hitting a key thing. Yeah, we have a daily communication, a weekly communication, an executive presentation, plus we have Teams. I mean, all these different things are being hit from so many different ways, and they might only be hitting like a nugget here and there until it's like a puzzle being put together. Oh, I'm changing my role. Oh, you're talking to me. Yeah. Godwin, what were you going to say?
Also, the lack of trust and empathy. So,
yeah,
people don't trust anything called change. Even before they hear it, they just say, no, we don't want it. They don't even know if it's going to make things better. We are just averse to change. We just don't like change. So, the trust is not there.
Who made this quote? Is there an author or?
I got this from Timothy Creasy from AdCar from ProSci. Timothy Creasy, but I'm sure many different people have said this. But thank you for asking. Yeah, that's who I've heard it from. But here's the thing: and we're running up against it from a time standpoint. And I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know you've worked all day, and I appreciate everybody being here. Is that what you want to be able to do? Is truly paint a current, a future state. Being able to say, this is what our future state is going to be looking like from a people, process, and technology standpoint, and getting people to buy into it. That's how you're going to be able to drive that cultural change and be able to get that understanding. And that's the first place that I love to say you start whenever you're doing a change, to be able to start with a future state. Rick, do I have just 2 more minutes? Is that all right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, when you hear future state, everybody, what do you think of when you hear something as a future state? What does that mean to you?
To be.
What's that?
To be.
Yeah.
Now what's next?
Yeah. What's next? What's happening?
A goal. Yeah.
A goal. And who needs to be able to answer that?
Leadership.
Leadership,
Facilitator of the change.
facilitator. Who else?
Everybody.
Everybody impacted by that
Right,
change.
true story.
And sometimes even your customers, even though that they could be an end one, because otherwise they feel like it's being done to them, not with them. And that's where we want to be part of that change, where it's not being done to me, but oh, we're part of this together and I'm helping drive that. Apple does a really good job of that. You know, I'm sure everyone has heard that before, how Apple, what they do is they put work out there because they want to make sure that their customers are part of the change. They love to be able to give feedback saying, hey, this didn't work here. They put out prototype and unfinished work all the time because people are giving feedback on that and being able to build upon it. And so I love to start there. And then it's extremely important to be able to communicate. Sorry. When you have your future state, that people are able to understand your business results, and business results meaning how it's impacting me. Why do you think that's so important, that when you're talking about a future state, that people see the business results? Why do you think that's so important?
So they could know where they are heading.
Yeah, where they're heading and where I'm going. All right, so that's where I think is just so key, the ability to point that future state. How does that relate? And this is something you can walk through with the different states of your current state and transition state. We like to say that transition is the messy middle. This is like the teenage years. We all had the different growth pains and things happen. It happens in organizations, and you have to be able to realize that I'd love to be able to say the future state, it's easy to get here, but there'll be some messy middles in there. Now, I'd love to hear just one more quick thing. If I can have you jump to frame number I'm sorry, frame number 15. 15. I'd love to hear, what's one thing you learned today and how are you going to apply this on the job? What's one thing that you learned or reinforce? Maybe you heard it, but you're saying, oh, I want to reinforce this. What's one thing you learned and how are you going to apply it on the job? I'd love to be able to hear what people have to say. Never be late to this. That's a good one. Good. How are you going to apply that on the job? All right. Well, I want to say thank you so much. This flew by, everybody. I really appreciate your engagement, your collaboration, and what you're doing as a club is outstanding. This is really going to help drive our community, help our organizations, and really help drive change in what you're doing. I can't applaud Rick and Regina more. I mean, they're just really making a huge impact, giving people the tools and the knowledge and skills and ability to drive change and be the transformation experts. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate your time, and I'll be around for other ones too. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Tim. So let's quickly.
Thank you.
Turn on your
Thank
video
you so
cameras.
much.
We're not leaving anywhere. Make sure we turn on your video cameras. Turn on your video cameras. Turn on your video cameras.
This was awesome. Thank
All
you.
right, so Tim, again, I hear from Victoria, awesome job. Thank you very much for contributing. So what we do at the end of this session, again, we project. So Tim was talking about the future, right? Making sure you see what that future state looks like. So I want you to give him your future state of him. Whatever gesture you want to give to him, what's his future state? You know, how do you want to project that to him? So we're going to take a quick snapshot. So everybody turn on your cameras, The future state of Tim is coming up now. Be careful what they come up with. All right. So the idea, again, any kind of gesture. Nelu, are you going to take that snapshot? Or who do I have out there? You got it? All right. So you're going to count.
I got it.
All right. So again, the future state of Tim, make sure you share your vision. All right. You ready, Nelu?
I'm ready.
Count down to
I'm ready to go.
Say go.
3, 2, 1, go. Okay, I got you.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that in LinkedIn, and then please make sure you can share it, like it. We are asking you only one thing from this event, not any money, but for you to share this with a friend. Okay, so Joe.
Joe, you're not allowed to.
I'm already there. I'm already trying to get there.
Oh God.
You already liked it.
No, I didn't. Not yet.
No way. So Tim, if there's any final words that you want to share with the group, like some advice, what would that final word?
Yeah, keep driving culture. Just because you're working remotely, absolutely. It is all about drive the culture, and you can be one person can make a difference, and you can be that one person. You're empowered to do that.